Hello, everyone. Welcome to Latina Republic Mental Health Conversations. I am Sole Quartucci, and I am the CEO and founder of Latina Republic. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing access to culturally responsive mental health education, in particular for immigrant communities. And today I am joined by Cindy Pang and Xiao. They are both mental health education and community outreach interns with Latina Republic. And so very excited to have them here with us. So we thought we would come together and chat about International Day of Happiness. And so today we're going to focus on happiness and learn more about mental health in China and among Chinese university students in the US. Hello, Cindy and Sia. It is so good to have you with us today. Would you start by introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about where are you from, what are you studying, and what is your role with Latina Republic in terms of the projects you're working on right now?
Sure, I can start. Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm originally from China and I moved to Singapore when I was 12, where I completed my middle and high school. Now I'm studying in the US, pursuing a double major in applied psychology and media culture communication. And at Latina Republic, I'm currently a mental health and community wellness intern, and I've been working on designing workshops for immigrant families, especially focusing on teens and parents for now, I try to bridge communication and support mental well-being within families.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And Sia, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi, my name is Xiao. I was born in Beijing, China. Then I moved to the US around 12. And I'm currently a sophomore at UMN studying psychology. And at Latina Republic, I work as a mental health intern where I help to design workshops focusing on stress coping and emotional well-being for immigrant communities.
Thank you so much, Sia. And since we're talking around International Day of Happiness, why don't we start with you, Cindy? What does happiness mean for you personally?
Well, for me, happiness can be very simple. It could literally be something like getting strawberry waffles from a cafe nearby my home, just small everyday moments that make me feel good. But if we're talking about a deeper sense of happiness, like well-being or like the Chinese character of 幸福, then it's more about having strong relationships, like friendships and family connections. And that kind of emotional support feel much more lasting, I would say.
Thank you, Cindy. That's really beautiful. And Sia, what does happiness mean for you personally?
For me personally, I feel like it's having a balance in my life, where I could feel like stable and organized, but also at the same time having some challenges so I could stay motivated, and also just know like I could make some small progress every day makes me feel, I don't know, like a sense of security.
I love that. And Cindy, do you think that the idea of happiness is talked about differently in China compared to the United States?
Well, just as the Chinese character, the Chinese word I mentioned, 幸福, actually there is no like a single English word that can really define that word. But if we're talking about that happiness, then it often includes things like family relationships, parent-child relationships, siblings, and also personal achievements. In the US, I feel like there is a stronger emphasis on individualism, so personal success and self-achievement can be more central. But overall, I think happiness is still very personal, that everyone defines it differently regardless of culture.
Thank you, Cindy. And Sia, what are your thoughts on that, on the idea that how happiness is talked about in China differently perhaps than the US?
I think I kind of agree with Cindy. I feel like happiness is very personal, but I feel like the big difference is mostly like across generations. I feel like in China, like the older generation have the idea of like happiness is like more like financially and come towards like, oh, you have like a house, you have like a car, so you have that security in your life, and also like a stable job, and like you're married, you have like a good husband or wife, and you have like a happy family with some children. Um, I'm not really sure like how people in the US like for older generations if like their values, but I feel like in China the older generation like care more about like grandchildren, like they think it's important to pass on that generation thing around. So I feel like that's like a difference I could sense.
Thank you so much for sharing. And as someone who grew up in China and studies psychology, Cindy, how would you describe the general attitude towards mental health there?
I mean, for now, I would describe mental health in China as a growing field. With more awareness and education, people are actually starting to recognize that mental health is important. That being said, I can't really fully represent the current situation in China since I left quite early. But based on my observations and conversations with my Chinese peers and also people, especially younger generations, we do talk about stress quite frequently now. But when I was younger, if I told my family that I was stressed, the response might be something like, everyone feels this, what makes you different? But now among peers, it's much more common to openly talk about emotion and stress. Personally, like I don't always share those emotional things with my parents, and I tend to process things on my own, which I think is partially influenced by the more individualistic culture here in the US. Also, in China, psychiatric services are relatively more established compared to counseling psychology, applied psychology, partly because medication is often more accessible and more affordable than long-term therapy. However, there isn't yet a unified national licensing system for counselors in China right now, which I think is something that will hopefully improve in the future.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Sia, what would you like to add to that? How would you describe the general attitude towards mental health in China?
Yeah, I feel like overall people are just become more open and more accepting about talking about mental health in China. Because I feel like when I was younger, back when I was still in China, people feel like mental health is something like private and probably not often talk about like with other people. But right now, I feel like as the girl of technology and social media, mental health is becoming more visible and talked about, especially among the younger people. But I feel like it's still a developing topic. But I've seen like people posting like educational video about mental health on social media, and I feel like people are starting to learn and become more accepting of that.
That's great to know. Thank you so much for sharing. And would you say that in China now it's people can openly talk about issues like stress, anxiety, and or depression, or is it still something that is a little bit private? Cindy, you can go first.
Well, I mean, it's really depends on different people. And for example, for me, I would definitely like openly talk about it with my friends, but still not like, talk about those with my parents. I'm not so sure what others will react, but um, yeah.
Okay, what about you, Sia?
I feel like for what I've seen and experienced, like for me and my friends, we would talk about it like what Cindy said. But I feel like for some like older generations, for example, like my parents, if I tell them like I'm stressed out and I feel like anxiety, they would say like something like, "Oh, you're just not getting enough sleep. You're on your phone too much, or like
Oh,
you're not
right,
like
right.
eating healthy enough," like something like that. Like I feel like I don't know. I feel like honestly, it's part of like their denial reaction. I feel like they would feel like responsible for not like taking care of you, so they would often blame on like I told you to not like use your phone too much. I told you to eat more healthy food instead of like thinking, oh, you're like actually like sick in that way.
Thank you so much. And now, bringing it back to both of you as international Chinese students studying at US universities, what would you say, in your opinions, are some mental health challenges that Chinese students might experience when studying abroad in the US?
Do I start?
Yes, Cindy.
I would say some common challenges I've seen included include homesickness, being far away from family, dealing with time differences, and even missing familiar food. And there is also like a financial adjustment because in China, many students, especially like, students who are studying abroad are used to convenient services like ride hailing or food delivery, but in the US, everything feels more expensive, especially with exchange rates. And most importantly, you really have to become independent. There isn't always someone who can immediately help you, so you learn to handle things on your own, such as you have to rent your apartment and paying the bills, which are things that we do not really have to do it on ourselves back home.
Sounds like a quite a great learning experience on adulting.
Exactly.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Mental health challenges for Chinese students that they might experience studying abroad in the US.
I feel like first of all, just having like the social connection. I feel like especially like in college, when students like they go to class, they're just here for the lecture instead of like social or networking. So it's kind of difficult for like international student to make friends there, and also like they use different social media in China, so it's kind of like a gap, I guess. And also, talking about financially, the tuition here, because my roommate, she's actually an international student, so I asked her about like, oh, how much is the tuition in China? And it's just like, oh, it's just like a few $100. So it's much cheaper compared to here, like across in the US, I guess. And I feel like that could just cause people to struggle or having like this pressure because of how much their parents have supported them, and often they would feel like they have this burden of like they have to do well and they have to do something out of this um to give back to their parents. Yeah, and also, just a big part is still the language. Like, even though like I know like international students, they have to pass this language test, it's still like different when you're actually in this new environment and then you have to like listen to lecture from like native speakers. It's just hard and difficult, and I have friends who are international students and they say they have to spend like much more time on just simply understanding the lecture and the class materials, and when they do homework it's just not like looking at the question and knowing how to do it, but also understanding the question and translating their answer to English from their own language. So it's really time consuming, and sometimes like it makes you like doubt yourself and your ability of whether it's just a language or I can't understand this content. So I think that's like a big part of what they're struggling with.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you for sharing that. And Cindy, what helps international students maintain their well-being when they're studying abroad and they feel maybe overwhelmed?
I would say start from myself. Me personally, my cat is a big source of my emotional support. I also spend time with friends and I enjoy hobbies like Chinese calligraphy, reading, watching shows, drawing, and gaming, and sometimes explore like even, new hobbies like playing guitar. And this all small routines really help me to stay grounded. And also, I always video call my parents, and that's another way as well.
I love that. What about you, Sia?
I feel like first, just making friends. Like what I said is kind of hard. So I will actually go on to like, Chinese social medias to seek for like international students, who are in the same situation as me, and I feel like, that helps like connect people who share the similar experience, so they also understands your struggle, and also just having friends helps reduce like the feeling of isolation and being like at a foreign country. And I feel like, more importantly, just having your own hobby. For me, I love gaming and I love like go on social media. So I I have like a group of friends online where I don't actually know them in person, but it would help me having like a sense of belonging as part of something. So I don't feel like that I don't feel that lonely like in here all by myself. But just I feel overall just having like a own hobby like just helps you like find a belonging here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. Those are amazing tips. And one last question in terms of international studies and your perspective. Cindy, what advice would you give to universities or workplaces to better support international students' mental health?
Well, advice for universities. I mean, something I've been thinking about through my work in culturally responsive pedagogy is that universities could better support international students by incorporating more culturally relevant materials into class, so that when students see their own cultures reflected in what they're learning, it can really improve their sense of belonging and well-being, and also like even, class material understanding for sure.
Thank you, Cindy. Sia, what about you? What advice would you give to universities or workplaces to better support international students' mental health?
I feel like in general just be more inclusive and supportive and just trying to be more understandable because like when I go out with my international friends and or like I go to classes with them, sometimes not all the time, but I see like um people when my friends are trying to talk to other people, they don't really understand what she's saying, and sometimes they could look confused or a little annoyed. And that would just cause my friends to become more nervous, and I feel like it's just making the whole situation worse because she's getting nervous and it's harder for her to talk to them because she's nervous. Yeah, and it's going on to like a really bad loop. And also I just also want to give some advice like to the international students. I feel like don't be afraid of sharing your struggles with like your professor or like other people, because some people like they're trying to be understandable, but like it's really hard for them to actually understand like your situation. So it's not like something you should be ashamed of to share with other people, and like just you're if you're struggling, like it's okay to talk to your professors because like um it's not something like it shouldn't it shouldn't be something like people hide from, and it should be like people should be supportive there, and it's really important to understand that. And also just I feel like also using like translator would help a lot, but sometimes like my friends they would say they feel like shy when they bring out their translator because people might think they're weird because like they're in the middle of a conversation, suddenly she just took out like Google Translator to them. But I feel like if it helps you, you shouldn't be like afraid of using it because you're doing the best to help yourself to fit in the situation, and you're just here for yourself and nothing should be like ashamed or like afraid to do it. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And Cindy and Sia, what are your plans for the future regarding mental health? Are you hoping to work back in China, use your degree there, or what does the future look like?
For me, because my family already moved to Singapore, so I would say I will go back to Singapore. But before I get a master degree, I do not see me going back.
Sia?
Um, my family like they all moved here, so I would probably stay at the US, and I'm also thinking of getting a master because it's kind of hard to get a job with psychology degree with like a bachelor degree. Yeah. But also in the future, I feel like I would also want to create contents on Chinese social media platforms. So because I want more people to understand what people with mental health are struggling with, and I want to build this connection of what psychology in the US looks like, and just bring like trying to make more influence, yeah, like cross-culturally.
Thank you so much, Xiya. And to wrap up our conversation on happiness, mental health, China, and international students, Cindy, what does happiness look like for students today?
Like, honestly, it might just be something as simple as like getting a cup of bubble tea after class, because as being said, happiness for me can be very simple and small.
Thank you, Cindy. And Xiya?
I feel like at least today, right now, for me, just like no homework for today or like tomorrow, and no class got canceled or something. And just like, oh, your friend asks you to hang out or like go to dinner together, something like that. Yeah, small things makes happiness.
I appreciate both of you so much, not just about what you shared, but also for the amazing work that you're doing and creating resources for immigrant families in various areas of mental health. So, what makes me happy is to have you here and to have you be a part of Latina Republic. And thank you so much for your time and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.